Your Monday afternoon with us here on ITV continues now with a roundup of the latest headlines with the Lunchtime News. With energy prices at record levels hitting both consumers and companies, what help can they expect? Business leaders are appealing for government intervention to protect them against surging prices this winter.
We need action, I would say this week, because I'm aware of some companies that are on the brink of going under.
Also this lunchtime, ITV News learns that HGV driver shortages are causing delays at the UK's biggest container port that could leave shelves empty. The NHS urges unvaccinated pregnant women to get the jab as they make up a fifth of England's sickest COVID cases. And
I'm really having a time of my life. I know I'm doing everything wrong.
Why George Clooney's happier than ever as a father who's just turned 60.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Rageh Omaar.
Good afternoon. Business leaders have told ITV News they fear companies will have to stop production within days unless they get help from the government. The surging cost of wholesale gas means industries that use huge amounts of energy are being pushed to the brink. Today, ministers are meeting with some of the worst affected to find a solution. It follows comments from the business secretary at the weekend where he said he was working with the Treasury to offer help, a suggestion later dismissed by Treasury officials. From Westminster, our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
If it comes in a glass bottle, then it needs energy. And even companies who consider themselves to be in a strong position, like this one in Chester, are deeply concerned about soaring annual bills.
We would expect to spend about £40 million in energy normally. If we look forward at this point, we're looking in excess of £100 million going forward. We need action, I would say this week, because I'm aware of some companies that are on the brink of going under.
Yet a Treasury source told journalists that the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, was making it up when he said the two departments were talking about support. So are they?
Officials and ministers from both departments will be talking to each other the whole time. And
so it was wrong. Whoever briefed from the Treasury that the Business Secretary had been making up meetings between the two was wrong.
Look, I don't know. We get these stories periodically about, unnamed sources, and you say, well, whoever it was. I don't know. I wasn't in that conversation. I don't know who it was or why they said and what they said and so on. What I do know is the Business Secretary is very, very focused on making sure we are there with business, with industry.
As well as glass making, manufacturers of steel and ceramics are also vulnerable to the massive increase in costs, and industry representatives are unimpressed by the government's spat.
The play out over the weekend has seemed a little farcical. There appears to be some belief that there are meetings already set up, certainly across the industry sectors I'm aware of. The only thing in position is a meeting tomorrow with the steel sector, so there's nothing today.
The government did hold meetings with industry representatives last week, but the opposition say concrete proposals are now needed.
See what help they need to get through this. But we haven't seen that in the last 24 hours. We've had division, we've had the Treasury slapping down the Business Secretary, and all the government's communicating at the moment is chaos when industry needs it to get a grip.
But multiple crises need gripping. The former boss of Tesco started work as a government supply chain advisor today.
Are we heading for a bleak winter?
I don't think so, but let me go and see what we can find.
And from energy prices to lorry drivers to butchers, they are not problems that are quickly and easily fixed.
And Carl joins us from Westminster. To say the least, Carl, pressure is really building up on the government to try to find some solution and fast.
Yeah, that's right, Rageh. And all this time, the Prime Minister seems to be on holiday, apparently in Marbella, although Number 10 won't confirm that. It does seem to be a working holiday. He has been talking to other world leaders about the forthcoming climate change conference up in Glasgow. And today his official spokesman said that he was also closely engaged on this energy issue. Perhaps he's been knocking heads together because the spokesman also said that the Treasury and the Department for Business are working together on this particular crisis, although no solid proposals have been brought forward yet. Nobody knows how long this crisis will go on for, and therefore whether the taxpayer can really be expected to put any money into it. There have been calls for a tax break. That might be one form of support that could be brought in. In the meantime, though, one other crisis does seem to have been fixed. You'll remember that shortage of industrial carbon dioxide. Well, today the Business Secretary announced that a deal has been reached to make sure carbon dioxide can continue to be supplied to industry without further taxpayer support.
All right, Carl in Westminster, thank you. ITV News has learnt of mounting delays at the UK's biggest container port that are threatening to exacerbate shortages of products on the shelves and thus push up prices. Felixstowe accounts for almost 40% of all shipping containers sent to and from the country. A shortage of HGV drivers means that containers are being left uncollected for more than a week. We've now learned the port management is considering turning ships away unless the situation improves. On average, containers arriving at the port are waiting 9 days for collection. That's twice as long as a year ago, with collections from the port down 15 to 20% in September from where they were at normal levels, leading to a backlog of some 7,500 containers. Well, our business editor, Joel Hills, is at the port. Joel, what are the consequences of what you've been learning? They sound grim.
Well, if they can get on top of this problem, they won't be. And the issue here, if it persists, though, will cause problems in as much as it will affect price, availability and the choice of goods. You may recall, Rageh, that just last year, at around exactly this time, Felixstowe was clogging up. The problems back then were staff absences due to COVID, were stockpiling in the run-up to the end of transition, and a glut of PPE, which was arriving on British shores bound for the NHS. The problem this time is slightly different. There appears to be a shortage of staff at the port to lift the containers off the ships onto the quay, and there is a shortage, unsurprisingly, of HGV drivers to ferry those containers away from the port onto their destination by road. Now, today, the Port of Felixstowe is saying congestion is a problem here, but at other UK ports too, and indeed around the world. In a statement, it said a vast majority of import containers are cleared for collection at Felixstowe within minutes of arriving. There are over 1,000 unused haulier bookings most days. The situation, however, is improving, and there is more spare space for import containers this week than at any time since the beginning of July.
And Joel, this isn't just a British problem.
No, it's not. Since economies are unlocked around the world, supply and demand has been horribly out of kilter in places. Shipping costs have exploded globally, and there are ships lining up struggling to get into Chinese ports and American ports. But in terms of the lorry driver situation, while there are shortages elsewhere in Europe, Logistics UK, which represents hauliers, says the problem in the United Kingdom is particularly acute, and the supply chain is under strain here in a way it isn't elsewhere.
All right, Joel in Felixstowe, thank you. The Metropolitan Police is to take no further action against Prince Andrew over allegations that he sexually assaulted a teenager 2 decades ago. Officers at Scotland Yard reviewed the case after Virginia Giuffre filed a lawsuit in August claiming she had been sexually abused by the Prince in London when she was 17. The Duke has consistently denied the allegations, and Sejal Karia is with me now. What exactly have the Met said, Sejal?
Rageh, this is the third time the Metropolitan Police has looked into these allegations, and once again it says that no further action will be taken. What's prompted this review is the civil case in the US against Prince Andrew, begun in August by Virginia Giuffre. She claims that she was trafficked to London by the Duke's former friend and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who then forced her to have sex with the Duke when she was 17, a minor under US law. There are allegations Prince Andrew has always denied, and he's previously said he doesn't recall meeting Virginia Giuffre. When asked in August about the civil action in the US, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Cresta Dick, said then no one is above the law and confirmed that a review was underway.
And what Has there been any reaction from the Duke?
Yes, a source close to the Duke has told us it comes as no surprise that the Metropolitan Police have confirmed that, having reviewed the sex assault claims against the Duke for a third time, they are taking no further action. And despite pressure from the media and claims of new evidence, the Met have concluded that the claims are not sufficient to warrant any further investigation. The Duke has always vigorously maintained his innocence and continues to do so. The Met said it'll continue liaising with other law enforcement agencies who are leading the investigation into matters associated with Epstein.
OK, Sejal, thank you very much indeed. Wales's First Minister has defended vulnerabilities in the country's new COVID pass scheme. From today, all over 18s in Wales will need to show either proof of vaccination or a negative lateral flow test in order to enter nightclubs and large events like concerts or football matches. Mark Drakeford says those who show a fake test result will be committing a criminal offence brought in to protect the scheme. Our reporter Hannah Miller is in Prestatyn, where one bar owner has decided to close early rather than enforce the changes.
Yeah, this place is quiet at the moment. It wouldn't be open at lunchtime normally anyway, but from tonight they're going to start closing early so that they're not classed as a nightclub, so they don't have to check COVID passes. The Welsh Government has introduced them from today. Anyone who wants to go to a nightclub or a number of big-scale events will have to show that they've either had a negative lateral flow test in the last 48 hours or that they have had the jab. For some people, of course, that will be hugely reassuring. But I spoke to the assistant manager here earlier. He said they don't even really know what a COVID pass is supposed to look like, and in reality, it will be very difficult to check.
I understand the young generation are generally people that are getting vaccinated the least. However, I feel as though people taking their own risks in here by not being vaccinated, that's their decision, as we do in lots of other areas of our lives. But for whatever reason with this, we're not allowing people to have that luxury, and for us to then police it, it's just too much for us to do.
Well, the Welsh Government say they're doing this because it will cut transmission of the virus. I think there is also a hope that it will encourage more people to go out and get their jab. Wales at the moment does have the highest rate of COVID among the UK nations. Scotland have also said that they're going to be enforcing COVID passes. No sign of them coming to England anytime soon. But for businesses here in Wales, it is a worrying time again, particularly as they look towards Christmas with no idea how long these COVID passes will go on for.
Hannah Miller in Prestatyn. Now, still to come, we're live from the Arctic Circle, where temperatures are rising at an alarming rate, and why George Clooney is having the time of his life at 60. The NHS is urging unvaccinated pregnant women to get the COVID jab after figures show they make up almost a fifth of the most critically ill patients in England. Between the start of July and the end of September, 17% of patients receiving ECMO treatment, a technique used when the lungs are so badly damaged that a ventilator cannot maintain oxygen levels, were unvaccinated expectant mothers. And out of all women between the ages of 16 and 49 receiving this treatment, pregnant women make up almost a third. I'm joined now by Dr. Jo Mountfield, Vice President of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Thank you very much for joining us this lunchtime. How concerned are you by these figures?
Well, obviously, it's a real concern to see any pregnant woman going through the traumas of being on ITU and having to have their baby early. And so to hear these figures is concerning. And I think it sort of reflects the severity of the Delta virus, which we know for those who are not pregnant has caused more issues in terms of complications. So it is very concerning. And that's why we really want to encourage women to think positively about going and getting a vaccination, because previously, I think we've not had the recommendations that we do now about vaccination, but from April onwards, we've been encouraging women and saying we definitely would want you to go and get the vaccination to protect yourself and to protect your baby.
But there is a natural reluctance, which one can understand, for a pregnant woman to get this jab. I mean, is there an optimum time once you're pregnant to have a vaccine?
So the reluctance is absolutely understandable, because we have lots of conversations with pregnant women about what not to eat, not to drink, and not to take certain medications. And so when there is a vaccination, it is absolutely understandable about some hesitancy. We do have much better data now about the safety of the vaccine, and that's why things have changed. So whereas originally the vaccine wasn't tested on pregnant women, we have much more information now about vaccination given at all stages in pregnancy. And so in simplistic terms, it is safe at any point in pregnancy. The data we have is really reassuring. It does not increase the risk of miscarriage. It does not increase the risk of stillbirth, and it does not increase the rate at which women give birth before they are supposed to as well. So all the real world data we have is very reassuring about this. And if women have got concerns, then please do contact your midwife, your GP, your obstetrician, and have a one-to-one conversation about those concerns, so that we can help explain and allay them, and hopefully encourage more women now to go and get their vaccinations.
And very briefly, you support the NHS's sort of public, information campaign to get vaccinations for pregnant women. You support that?
Absolutely supportive. Yes, really important. More information can be found on the websites, our own college website, the Royal College of Midwives. So more information available. But yes, we are very supportive and would want women to think really carefully and go and talk to somebody and go and book themselves in and get themselves a jab.
OK, Dr. Jo Manfield, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
COVID travel rules have been relaxed today, with the UK's red list reduced to just 7 countries. 47 countries have been removed from the list, including Brazil, South Africa and Thailand. The remaining red list countries are all in Central and South America. And people in Sydney have been enjoying new freedoms now that the city has reopened after more than 100 days in lockdown. Fully vaccinated people can now visit venues such as cafes, hairdressers and gyms, and meet friends and family at home. It's now less than 3 weeks until world leaders will meet in Glasgow for the COP26 climate change conference. The summit is seen as the last chance to limit a devastating rise in global temperatures. Some of the biggest increases are being seen in parts of the Arctic, including the Norwegian island of Svalbard, where temperatures are rising 4 times faster than the rest of the world. Well, let's take you there now and speak to our correspondent, Peter Smith. Peter, what are the consequences of all of this for Svalbard?
Rageh, I'm standing at 78 degrees latitude polar north, and this is the fastest warming place on planet Earth, heating up 4 times faster than the global average, and that comes with consequences, which we have seen. 10,000-year-old glaciers here melting in front of our eyes. The locally named ice fjord just to my right no longer has any sea ice, that's completely disappeared, and the ecosystem that sustains life on Earth is fundamentally changing. And for people, there is now warmer air, which brings greater threat of avalanches. That's why here in Svalbard they're now airdropping in huge metal barriers, avalanche defences, to protect the town, because this winter means danger. And I spoke to some school students here who are now living under the threat of climate change.
I think we would like them to hear that this is the reality of things. Things are happening, changes are happening, and they are the ones that need to act.
It definitely makes me feel a bit angry, because it seems as though the leaders of the world don't really care and they don't take it seriously, because I think they're too far away from the consequences to actually understand that it's happening now at this moment and not only in 20, 30 years.
Now that was the message from the young generation here to the leaders of the world who will be meeting in my hometown of Glasgow in just a few weeks. At COP26, it's a crucial line in the sand, a moment for humanity, because coming here I've learned that this is just the start. But what happens in the Arctic is not contained here. Our whole planet is connected to this place. Wildlife, our weather patterns, they need the Arctic to stay cold, but the Arctic is heating up. It's going in the wrong direction. Humanity in Glasgow will have a chance to decide what happens next, for better or for worse, and what kind of future awaits us all.
Prepared.
Thanks very much, Pete in Svalbard. And you can see Peter's full report on News at 10 tonight at 10:20 this evening. Following the disappointment of Emma Raducanu over the weekend and his own wedding ring drama, Sir Andy Murray has won what many see as his biggest game since recovering from hip surgery. The three-time Grand Slam champion was playing someone nearly half his age, 18-year-old Carlos Alcaraz, tipped to be a star of the future. Murray came back from a set down to move into the third round at Indian Wells tournament in California. And finally, age eventually catches up with the best of us. Once seen as the world's most eligible bachelor, George Clooney is letting fans in on a few secrets, speaking at the premiere for his new film, The Tender Bar. Last night, he joked turning 60 this year was better than the alternative. And it turns out the actor turned film director also has a rather sticky parenting style that may not go down so well at school. Sally Biddulph has more.
Not yet.
Ever since appearing as Dr. Doug Ross in ER in the 90s, George Clooney has set pulses racing. Now, after a milestone birthday and emerging from lockdown, he's doing it again, charming his way along the red carpet at the premiere of his film, The Tender Bar.
It's just fun to see people again. You know, honestly, this is the first time I've seen a bunch of faces in a long time, and it's nice. I enjoy it, and this is the first time I put a suit on in 2 years. It's weird.
And as for wife Omaar,
well, she dresses that way all the time. In the morning, she comes in, you know, you want coffee? She dresses like that.
channeling old-fashioned glamour, Team Clooney have recently celebrated 6 decades of George.
Turning 60 is not fun, as you can imagine, but it's better than dead. So I'll take it, and then I'll take whatever job I can. You know what I'm saying? He's not 60, so he can laugh.
Keeping him young, though, are the couple's 4-year-old twins, and he's honing his dad jokes.
I like it. I'm really having a time of my life. I know I'm doing everything wrong because I'm doing all the things that I know will make my son and daughter, they're going to think that it's funny to put like Nutella on your shoes and pretend like it's poop. They're going to think that's funny. I think it's funny. You know, it may not go so well in school.
Parents' evenings are going to be interesting. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
And that's it this lunchtime. Mary will be here with the evening news at 6:30. That News Where You Are follows the national weather. From everyone here, goodbye.